If you've ever sat at a table full of people who once swore they loved you and still felt completely invisible, this story is for you. Because that night, when I tried to give my dad a framed photo of us, one that meant everything to me, he didn't even glance at it. He raised a glass, looked at my younger brother and said, "Now he's the future of this family." And I just sat there, my hand still on the photo frame, like a child waiting for a pat on the head that never came. It was my father's 60th birthday, an event my mother had been planning for months. Private dining room at an upscale steakhouse, custom monogrammed menu cards, a string quartet playing softly near the bar. It was the kind of night meant for legacy and pride. I showed up a few minutes early, dressed in a navy blue blazer, the same one I wore when I passed the bar exam years ago. And in my bag was a gift I had spent weeks preparing, a black and white photograph, beautifully framed, of the two of us on the day I graduated law school. Back then, he told everyone I was going to change the justice system. I used to believe him. When it came time for gifts, I waited, nervously, like a teenager hoping for attention. I slid the photo frame across the white linen tablecloth toward him. "I thought you might want this back on your desk," I said, smiling. He looked at it, then he looked through it. Not even a second passed before he pushed it aside, picked up his wine glass, and turned to my brother Lucas. "To the one who's made this family proud," he said, lifting his glass. "To the future. To Lucas." My mother didn't even blink. She clinked her glass, gave Lucas that familiar tight-lipped smile she saves for guests at political fundraisers, and sipped. I sat there, frozen, my hand still resting where the frame had been. I don't remember what dessert was served. I just remember my stomach folding in on itself. When I excused myself early, no one asked why. When I stepped outside into the freezing parking lot, no one followed. I cried in my car with the heater off and the framed photo clutched to my chest like a lifeline. And in that moment, the pain wasn't just about being forgotten. It was about knowing I was never going to be forgiven for speaking up, for standing up, for being the daughter who wouldn't play along. They didn't say it outright that night. But the message was clear. I was no longer part of the Caldwell family. I was a mistake they were trying to quietly erase. It's funny. People binge revenge stories for entertainment, for drama. But for some of us, revenge isn't about getting even. It's about being seen. And this was the night I disappeared from their narrative, but not from the story. The fallout didn't take days. It took hours. 3 nights after that dinner, I submitted my internal audit report, a 47-page document, complete with timestamps, chain of command receipts, and redacted whistleblower statements, pointing directly to a misused eldercare contract, a contract where someone had funneled taxpayer money into shell firms and hush settlements. Buried 3 layers deep in the paperwork was my father's name. I didn't accuse him. I followed procedure. I submitted it anonymously, by the book, because I believed somehow the system would protect the truth. 72 hours later, I turned on the news and saw my face. Breaking: state legal aid under investigation for falsified evidence, tampering, and ethics violations. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there until I saw his interview. My father, Roger Caldwell, looked right into the camera, voice steady, face unreadable. "We raise our children with values," he said, "but sometimes they forget." He never said my name. He didn't have to. That night I went home, or tried to. My mother met me at the door, arms crossed like I was a solicitor. "You can't live here anymore," she said. "You brought shame to this family. I won't have it inside these walls." I asked if she'd read the report. She didn't answer. I looked toward Lucas's room. His light was on. I waited. But he didn't come out. not even when I shut the door behind me for the last time. I packed one duffel bag, left my degree behind, left my framed commendation from the governor's office, left my name. You know, I always thought if I ever left home, it would be because I got a job in DC, or maybe bought my first house. Something adult, something proud. Instead, I left like a fugitive, with nothing but a prepaid phone, a grey hoodie, and the echo of being called a disgrace by the people who raised me. If you've ever been made to feel like your presence was a problem, like your absence made someone's life easier, tell me in the comments. I read every story, I really do, because the silence they left behind, it was louder than any scream I've ever heard. Glenmore didn't ask questions, that's the only reason I stayed. It was the kind of town that got quiet after 6 p.m, where gas stations sold more coffee than fuel, and nobody ever asked where you came from, just whether you could pay your rent on time. I showed up in the middle of the night with a duffel bag, a fake name, and the kind of exhaustion that sinks into your bones. The woman who ran the used bookstore didn't ask for an ID. She handed me the key to the room above the shop and said, "Heat's a little moody. That okay?" I nodded. That was more kindness than I'd gotten in weeks. I told people my name was Natalie March. I said I used to teach, technically true. I took a job at the public library, teaching adult writing classes on Tuesday and Thursday nights. The room smelled like old paper and cinnamon tea. The radiator clanked every 10 minutes, like it was still deciding if it wanted to live. No one looked too closely at me. That was the magic of Glenmore. But I didn't stop being myself. Not entirely. At night, after class, I'd sit in the corner of the library with a stack of state bulletins and quietly rewrite flawed legislation. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't trying to come back. I just couldn't watch things go wrong and do nothing. The first piece I submitted anonymously, under the name Senator M, was a quiet protest against the proposed shutdown of Glenmore's prisoner re-entry program. It didn't make headlines. It didn't even make noise. But 3 days later, the bill was pulled for further review. No one knew why. I did. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just wrote in the back of a notebook I kept hidden under my pillow, "I am not allowed to show up, but I can leave footprints." It became a rhythm. Mornings spent shelving books, evenings helping ex-cons draft their first resumes, nights editing policy memos that no one knew came from me. One of the men in my class, Marcus, once said, "I didn't know you could say 'I matter' without raising your voice." That line stuck with me, because quietly, painfully, I was trying to do just that. If you've ever had to rebuild your identity in a place where no one knew your name, I want you to know I see you. I lived that too. There's something sacred about being invisible, until the day comes when you choose to step back into the light. But at that point in my story, I didn't think light was even for me anymore. I wasn't trying to be seen, I just didn't want to disappear completely. His name was Elliot Reyes. He wore corduroy jackets with frayed elbows and mismatched socks like he didn't care, or maybe just had better things to care about. We kept bumping into each other at the library, first over a misplaced copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, then again by the old heater when both of us reached for the same mug of stale staff room coffee. The first time he really looked at me, he said, "You read like someone who's hiding in books." I laughed too hard. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because no one had seen through me like that in a long time. He taught literature at the high school across town, ran the community book club, quoted Baldwin like scripture, and asked questions with real curiosity, not agenda. And little by little, I let myself drift toward him. It started small, late-night chats after class, walks through frost-covered sidewalks, when neither of us wanted to go home just yet. Then dinners, cooked clumsily in his tiny kitchen, always too much garlic, never enough light. He never asked about my past, and I never told him. I was still Natalie March, the quiet girl who taught adult writing classes and had a thing for strong coffee and weaker eye contact. But then came the moment I couldn't undo. We were sitting in the library after hours. He reached across my cluttered desk for a book and paused. His fingers brushed a folded policy memo I'd been editing, a draft I'd meant to hide. He unfolded it, read a paragraph, then looked up, brows knit. This is the same language Senator M used last month, he said softly. His eyes met mine, not accusing, just searching. I smiled too quickly. It's nothing. I help a few groups clean up their writing, that's all. He paused, then nodded. But something in him changed, like a door had closed. For days we went through the motions, book club, casual dinners, light talk. But the air between us was different, quieter, heavier. Then one night, as we walked beneath a brittle, starlit sky, he stopped mid-step. "Natalie," he said, and then, after a beat that felt like a lifetime, "I love you, but I can't build something with someone who's not willing to be known." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He waited, and when I didn't say anything, he turned and walked away. I didn't chase him, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't think I deserved to. If you've ever pushed someone away because you didn't believe you were worth staying for, I understand. I did that too. And sometimes the silence that follows, it doesn't echo. It just settles and stays. I hadn't planned to go. The invitation to the state gala arrived in a crisp envelope, no name, just a line typed on thick cardstock. "Your words moved policy. Let us celebrate the idea, not the face." I knew it was a setup, but maybe, just maybe, I was done hiding. So I wore black, a high-neck gown, hair tied back, no jewellery, but the simplest pearl studs, the kind of look that makes people stare just long enough to wonder, but not long enough to remember. The ballroom at the Landmark Hotel glittered with polished brass and cold ambition. Donors laughed too loudly. A quartet played something elegant and empty. I stayed near the edge of the room, unseen, until I saw him, Lucas, my brother, his suit tailored, smile effortless, eyes tired in a way only I would recognize. He brushed past me without noticing, but the woman beside him, Sarah, looked at me just a second too long. And then it happened. The governor took the stage, holding a glass of champagne. "Tonight," he said, "we honour the unseen forces shaping real change in our state." He scanned the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the author behind our most impactful policy reforms, Senator Natalie March, formerly known as Nina Caldwell." Gasps, then silence. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind, the kind that drops like glass on marble. I stepped forward, slowly. My family, my mother, my brother, even my father, frozen. I turned to them, just enough for only they could hear. Funny how failure found a way to rewrite the laws you once ignored. My father didn't speak, my mother looked away, but Lucas, his voice cracked as he whispered, "Nina, I didn't know." And I whispered back, "You didn't want to." I didn't stay long, just long enough to let the room remember me, not as the scandal, not as the daughter they erased, but as the voice they could no longer ignore. The fallout didn't wait long. By the next morning, my name was everywhere. Senator M. Unmasked, the disgraced lawyer behind Iowa's policy reform. News anchors recycled the same phrases: controversial, manipulative, strategic redemption. Then came the video. A clip stitched together from old hearings. My voice, my face, chopped and reassembled until I sounded like a liar. "I misled the court," it claimed. "I fabricated evidence." I never said those things, not in that order, not like that. But it didn't matter. People believed what they wanted. The fake accounts came next, comments under every article. She just wants attention. She's a fraud in pearls. Just another snake with a soft voice. And then Elliot. I didn't know he'd spoken to Sarah until the local radio played his voice. I think I was just part of her plan. Maybe I was the credibility she needed. That one hit deeper than any headline. I sat in the dark, the press tearing me apart, and thought, maybe they won. Maybe I should disappear again. But then, a letter. Handwritten. Creased. Addressed simply, to Nina Caldwell. You helped me file for custody. You taught me how to write a letter to the judge. Now my daughter calls me Dad. Please don't let them silence you. Malik. I read it 3 times. And then I stood up. I didn't go back to old allies. They had gone silent. I called Lena Tran, an independent journalist who'd lost her job exposing Westfall Medical years ago. She still had the files. Within a week, we had everything. Emails showing Westfall's ties to dark money, records of Sarah receiving consulting fees, fake accounts traced back to PR firms, and a copy of the original video, unaltered. We held the press conference not in a marble hall, but in the cracked Glenmore Library. The same wall that had once been spray-painted liar now held a simple banner. Truth speaks, even when silenced. I stood at the podium and said, I didn't fight to be famous. I fought because someone had to. This isn't a comeback. It's a correction. That afternoon, Sarah was suspended. Westfall's board launched an internal audit. And Elliot? He came to the next community forum and stood in the back, didn't say a word, just listened. I didn't speak to him, not that day, but he stayed, and that was something. Later, when the education bill I drafted finally passed, the Senate named it the March Act. It didn't bear my family's name. Just the name I chose when I thought I had nothing left. If you've ever had your voice stolen, your name twisted, your truth denied. But you still kept going. I hope you know this story was written for you. Drop a still here in the comments if you've ever had to start again after being broken, because I promise you, you're not the only one.